I can fly higher than an eagle. You are the wind beneath my wings.
Oh, it's Yumi. Oh, really?
Yumi, yeah.
Oh. Say hi, Auntie Rob.
Don't cry now. We're gonna take
Make your best nasty face. Yell at the camera. Hi, Vicky. How are ya? Hey, you're on TV. I'm trying to make the baby happy. Happy. He'll be happy now.
Mom, you're I gotta get him asleep before he goes in the bed, though. Oh, yeah. Otherwise.
Look at his teeth gone already. That's great. Oh, you're taking.
Go get in the picture, Grandma. Go get in the picture. No, come on. Go get in it.
This is your great-grandchild.
Yeah, but not you with Mark.
Yeah, well, I wasn't thinking about that.
Make any noise with that machine. He sleeps through it. He thinks he sleeps for hours.
Someone's at the door.
Oh, that's the Lounibos is coming.
Helen's got it.
Come in.
Oh, the Lanes are coming. Go
Is anybody
see the
following
baby.
you?
They're all coming in the other
Starting to get burned. Looks pretty good. Try a little sharp. Safer cooking. Well done. All right. There we go. Thank you. Oh boy. It's another charger. That's a little one. Can't even chase them.
I'll give you my autograph now so you can wait in line with the rest of the groupies.
You can teach my kid how to play baseball.
I'm sure I'm going to be mob.
He's going to be a baseball player.
There you go. Take it down.
Softly.
You're going to be good.
Okay, that's a good throw.
Well, Jules will play football.
It's your picture.
You can only go in and do the picture. That's all I'll allow.
Likes the camera. I got that impression. You lost all contact.
Get him into soccer.
Hey, that was
The bird on.
I know, it probably would have. Got to watch out for him to come up behind me.
I'm doing all right. I'm not from there.
I didn't do anything.
It was so nice getting a picture.
And then, what they were doing,
Eli,
What did you do earlier?
oh yeah.
I'm
They've been coming for
They'll
an
complain
hour
about them
now.
forever. Will they go down?
Those strings are going to be in your picture.
Jules? Like the strings, Bob? Yeah, he's down the strings.
He sounds like he's wiggle there a minute.
Hi, I'm your cousin.
Right, this is When he wants to, he doesn't want to be held. No, when he wants to do something, then he just goes straight ahead for it.
Name tags.
One in the bird.
There'll be a quiz.
Don't throw them in there, Jules.
I'll do it.
We're going to get to the drawing stage real soon.
Oh, we're in it.
But she's about to aim now. What? It's hard for us.
Where are you? Show you.
This kid. Yeah, we tried to do it.
Oh, I'm...
All right, guys.
Yeah, there we go. Let's go get her.
Follow every rainbow till you find your dream. A dream that will need all the love you can give every day of your life. For as long as you live, climb every mountain, wade every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find your dream.
So I believe we have someone that's up next to us, so I'll let Kay take care of this. I'll be right back.
Do you do much singing? The French songs or?
That's fine.
Oh, queen for a day! Where'd you get this?
Now the coronation.
This isn't fair. I can't wear a crown.
There you can.
What is this I'm wearing?
Grandma, smile. Wait, I want to.
Big smile.
Smile, I'm crying.
That's something we don't see very often.
This is the part of the program where Leroy ad-libs.
You know it was your mom.
Happy birthday, Mom.
All right.
77 years old.
Oh, dear.
We're celebrating other occasions today. Barbara and Mike, 25 years of marriage. Congratulations. Lucille's turning 30 years old today. And Anne's going to have a birthday on Saturday.
Mike? Yeah. Oh, 20
Yeah,
again.
Helen. That's Helen. What would you like?
What was that, Helen?
Yes. And all the other birthdays of the year. Yes, Your Majesty.
How many are there?
Legions. Which reminds me of a story. This does remind me of a story. Yesterday, Kay told me that there was a program for today and that she had scripted my remarks and she gave them to me. And the script was handed to me, and on item 6, it's Leroy ad-lib. So this reminds me of a story I heard a long time ago about in ancient Rome when the Romans were sacrificing Christians. And in the Colosseum, they had a special occasion. It was full of Romans, and the emperor was there. And they paraded in this raggedy group of Christians into the arena to be eaten by lions. The Christians were in the center of the arena, and the gates opened, and the lions came out. And they were somewhat docile, so one of the leaders of the Christians took the prerogative to walk over and talk to the leader of the lions, and they chatted for a very brief time. Then he walked back to his group, and nothing happened. And the crowd started getting restless. The lions were checking their nails and sleeping and yawning, and the Christians were praying, and nothing was going on. The emperor was furious. So he decided, he called the lion keeper up, and he says, go find out what's going on. The lion keeper went down, and he talked to the lions briefly. And he came back up to the emperor. He says, we've got a real problem. Somebody told the lions that there's going to be an after-dinner speech.
How much did you pay this crowd over here?
I guess the... When I thought about who we were honoring today, I thought about the fact that most of us are Kennedys because of Mom. And, you know, Grandpa Kennedy, who some of us remember and some of you don't, used to say that there were 3 Kennedys at one time. One of the Kennedys settled in Scotland. One of the Kennedys settled in Ireland. And the other Kennedy just disappeared. God knows where he went, Your Majesty. And apparently that's who we're descended from. A couple of years ago, I had the privilege of meeting the High Sheriff of Scotland, the Earl of Errol. And I introduced myself, and I told him that I had Kennedy blood in me. And he said, well, that's very unfortunate. He said, where he comes from, one of the more notorious smugglers was a Kennedy. And he was notorious because he was the only smuggler in the history of Scotland that was shot by a taxman. So I'm sure that's why we ended up in America. As you know, Mom was a nurse for many years before she decided to become a mother. And one of her more illustrious patients couldn't be here today, but he sent a cassette. And he asked me if I would play that cassette. So I'd like you to listen very carefully, see if you remember this old patient of yours. He made the cassette. I don't know. So, Kay, could you play that? Louder. No. That's not it. That's it. Turn it up. Here's her patient. Now listen carefully.
I go over here from when you came down from San Francisco as my medic, last 12 years old. It was really fun. Sunday, I shouldn't tell you, but
there's so many things
Helen
I
was a
don't
nurse,
remember.
and I was 12 years old. Nobody's given me any other. Helen flew down or got in a plane and came down. She took, give you another one. Yeah. My sister's okay, but nobody else can touch me. No way.
But you had appendix out when you were about 10 years old.
Yeah.
And
That is so
came
funny.
down and got
She was 18.
two cars that came in one car and then someone.
That's it, Wally. Thank you. Some of you may have recognized that voice. That was our illustrious Uncle Wally, who was recounting Mom's special transportation to Fresno to give him an enema. He wouldn't let anybody else give him an enema. Now, I know some of you are kind of bashful about coming up here and talking, but one of you I know will not be bashful because we've all looked upon you as our standard bearer. Whenever there's a battle or anything, she was always in the front, the forefront. She would carry that standard. If we were out of step, she'd let us know we were out of step. And I like to think I am what I am today, thanks to my sister, Helen Marie. Helen, would you come up here and say a few words?
I'm the shy one.
Yeah, sure.
Leroy doesn't know what else to say. He knows I'm the shy one. So, since he's taking a break, since I'm up here now, I'm going to call on Leroy first to tell us his story of his childhood. Come on, Leroy. I'll be last.
All right, Helen. This is going to get really down and dirty. I can see that. Well, we'll save the best for the last then, and I'll tell a story. I'm sure I'll think of a few more stories, but I know perhaps I'll call up the finest athlete in our family. I know you immediately thought of me, but I was limited to football. I know a lot of you are thinking of Don as one of our finest athletes, and he is. He is the finest swimmer, surfer, windsurfer in the family, and some of you don't realize it, but he was also a championship skier.
Right on down.
I don't know if you've heard the story, but there is a dismal little town in Colorado called Silverton, Colorado. It's a mining community in this beautiful Swiss setting. Don and I have both been there, and we both agree that it should have been the set for the Night of the Living Dead. But tucked between the city of Silverton and the city of Durango, on the banks of the River of the Lost Souls, is a place called Purgatory. And several years ago, some of the best downhill skiers in the world, the finest downhill skiers in the world, accumulated there. And Don took them all on, and he won the medal. I don't think all of you know that. He is truly an athlete, but he doesn't want to tell a story. Do you, Don?
I don't have a good story.
Oh, all right. Well, you know, I never saw Rick and Bob play Little League ball, but Dad used to say they were the finest athletes in the family. Until Tom came along. We have sitting in our midst a man who could have been a baseball coach. What happened?
Look out.
A piece of paper? This man was drafted by the Minnesota Twins as a shortstop, and he opted to make money. Therefore, it confirms that. So none of these guys want to tell stories, except Bob. Bob, you want to tell a story? Get up here.
All right, Bob.
Let me take you. Wait a minute. With Robin. 50 words? No, can't eat it. Well, really my best stories are about Leroy, but that's another birthday.
About the worm, or the snake, Bob.
But I've got a lot of good stories about Mom, too.
How about that snake story, Bob?
Yeah, I know. Well, we won't embarrass Leroy anymore.
How about the lingerie story?
No, I was thinking of the garbage can story. That's my favorite one. But my story about Mom goes back to when I was a teenager. Robin really liked this story because she thought this really kind of encapsulated Mom's character. And we all have stories that kind of stories about Mom that bring out the same kind of thing that this story does. But this goes back to when I was learning how to drive. I must have been about 15 years old, and
Mom probably knows this one. Anyway, I think it was in the old Thunderbird, and we decided, you know, I was learning how to drive, and Mom decided, as she did for all of us, that she was going to give us a little practice. And this particular day, it was a weekday, we drove out to the coast, and we decided to stop at it was Tony's. We decided to stop at Tony's for clam chowder. All sounds pretty innocent, and everything went fine until it was time to leave. And if you guys remember Tony's, you know, it's that smallest bay, and out in the front, they've got the crab pots all lined up, right in front of where the parking lot is. And being an inexperienced driver, instead of putting it into the car into reverse, I put it into drive and ran right into the crab pots and knocked them all down. And it was not only really noisy and messy, it was really embarrassing. And the owner...
How many of them have ever heard this story?
Well, I don't think anybody has except for Robin.
I haven't.
Never would tell on you, Bob.
Well,
Bob, it's a good example.
that's part of the story.
Go on, Krabby.
Anyway, that's, you know, I think you get the gist of it, but the real point, okay, you can,
Come on.
the real point is that
Grandma.
the owner came running out and he was screaming and I was, you know, cowering and Mom came up to him and said that she was driving. And and moved me over to the passenger seat, and it was, yeah, you did, and it was, you know, I was pretty embarrassed by it, obviously, and Mom never mentioned that story to anybody. I mean, it was a good story. That's right, you sure do. And now that this many years later, we can, this is the confessional, I guess, but but really, it's the point is that Mom was sensitive enough to know that I was really embarrassed by that, and she never mentioned that to anybody.
I figured you would tell them yourself.
I'm sure we all have lots of stories like that. That's the one that came to mind, and
I keep the best ones to myself till the end, and they have to tell them.
yeah, I know. Any of you have any secrets? They're probably right near her head. She's probably saving a lot. We probably all have secrets that they haven't run out yet. No, that's just for me. The rest are all. Let's hear it for Bob. That took a lot of courage to come up here and fill his chest up. All right, Bob. We're going to have Heidi come on and sing another song, but I just wanted to share something with you. This is not a true story, but it's something that I frequently thought of growing up in World War II with Mom. You know, growing up as a child in World War II, we didn't always eat our vegetables and things, and we were frequently being told, think of the poor kids in China. And I never did this, but this is something I always wanted to do. I wanted to come to the table, and I wanted to bring a big envelope with me. And when she said that, I was going to dish those vegetables in there, and it was addressed to the poor kids in China. Heidi, get up here.
And then I find them under the table on the crossbar.
Those were highlights.
Jelly sandwiches.
Oh, that's a great story.
Oh yeah, anything beans, string beans, Joan.
Right outside. We left the table pretty fast.
Wasn't it string beans? String beans, mashed potatoes.
And one thing on your shoulders. Oh, Helen, Helen. Hi, Helen. Kay told me about your wonderful husband, Lee, and I thought it was between the two of us we picked out a song that's for both of you. I know he's not here, but I want you to enjoy it. Longer than there have been fishes in the ocean, higher than any bird ever flew, longer than there have been stars up in the heavens, I've been in love with you, stronger than any mountain cathedral, truer than any tree ever grew, deeper than any forest primeval. I am in love with you. I'll bring fire in the winters, you'll send showers in the springs, we'll fly through the falls and summers with love on our wings. Through the years as the fire starts to mellow, burning lines in the book of our lives, through the binding cracks and the pages start to yellow, I'll be in love with you. I am in love with you. This one is for all the family. You guys, you know the song, I want you to join in because it really fits for everyone here. And we never thought we'd feel this way, and as far as we're concerned, we're glad we got the chance to say that we do believe we love you. And if we should ever go away, well then close your eyes and try to feel the way we do today, and then you can remember. Keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me, for sure, 'cause that's what family's for good times and bad times, we'll be on your side forevermore. Oh, that's what family's for. Ooh, la da 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 da. And thanks to you and me, now there's so much more we see. And so by the way, we thank you. And then, for the times when we're apart, well then close your eyes and know these words are coming from our hearts. And then you can remember. Keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me, for sure, 'cause that's what family's for good times and bad times, we'll be on your side forevermore. Oh, that's what family's for.
Thank you, Heidi. That was beautiful.
That's very nice of you to think of it.
This family is blessed with one of its members who is a very sensitive writer, and I like to think of Joan as the poet laureate of our family. And for all of you who are too cowardly to come up here and speak, or foolish, Joan has some things she'd like to share with you. Joan?
Well, when Kate first brought up this wonderful idea, it was all Kate's idea, Mom. I didn't know what to say because I thought of bringing up one moment, which was a little unnerving. And so this morning I really was in a panic by that time because I didn't have a story,
And so what I thought, well, since there's going to be a PA, maybe I could read a little piece, that I had done. So I went feverishly through my newly awakened computer trying to find something, and I couldn't read my files. I didn't know what anything was because I haven't been in it for so long. So I came across the piece that I have that is some notes that I wrote down after having dinner one evening with Mom about 10 years ago at the Schmier place. And it was just a quiet little evening that we spent together, but we both drank a little wine, and we were very reminiscent. And what I came away from the dinner with was a sense of this wonderful story that Mom had told me about herself as a young girl, and thoughts and feelings that she had had growing up before we came along. And it gave me a real sense of courage to suddenly see a deeper side of my mother that I wasn't fully aware of. And it helped me at that time to see myself in wherever I was at that time. So I thought I'd read these notes that I wrote, and I deleted some of the things, so, there won't be any embarrassing moments for me.
I'm scared of it.
But it's a little long, and I hope you'll bear with me. I'll try to read it quickly. But I think it says something of a side of Mom that she tries to hide from us sometimes. And I think it's really exciting to feel how much I am her daughter and how much I know each of us is her child and her grandchild. And I think that's the part of us that's very important for us to carry on. That's part of the oral tradition and the history that really brings the character out in the family. So these are just some little tales of Mama growing up. This was on May 20th, 1980. I asked her, can you all hear? I asked her at one point, we had been talking about inflation and the difficulties people were experiencing making things meet. If she could remember times being so hard at any other time in her past. Full mouth, she nodded, and finally said that when she was still young, in high school and at St. Mary's, it was pretty difficult then too. It was during the Depression, 1931, and she said that she could remember her father saying that if it weren't for her mother's budgeting, that they never would have survived. But she said that Grandpa was also the kind of man who would have given away the shirt off his back, and that Grandma's frugality was a real necessity at that time, with 9 kids to boot, so to speak. She said that she had a sense that things were always tight, a sense that probably she got from her mother. So she did without. She said all her clothes were hand-me-downs or remade by her mother. To have a store-bought dress was unheard of for her. Grandma even made her high school graduation dress for her. I think we saw that in some of those photos. It was gorgeous, but it's just the sense, it really shifts us to that other generation of time, and I think that's special for us to remember all she's been through, we get caught in our own moments so easily. But one of those photographs that I sent out to you was of her in that dress. Let me see. But getting back to the economic state of those days, she said that she could remember when her parents told her that they had taken out a loan when Grandpa went into business for himself. After he had taken a chance and invested privately in a carload of sugar plane counters, tape wash counters, used and sought after in that time for kitchen counters, while he was up in Oregon on business for his employer. You can correct me if this is wrong.
I remember that part.
Yeah, you did good. She said that she had so little awareness of money and business that she thought that alone meant that they were really feeling the pinch and couldn't make it financially. She was at St. Mary's at the time, and she wouldn't ask for a thing because she knew that if she asked Grandpa for $5, he'd send her 10. And she knew that there weren't $10 to spare. Money was tight, but they always had enough. And like us, but they were instructed in frugality, and one didn't waste or exceed the need. So she had continued with this mentality, scrimping and saving, as they went into business for themselves. And then, while she was away, they began to build that grand home on Terrace Avenue while she was in San Francisco. When she finally came home and saw this new house, she couldn't believe it. It was a castle to her, and she was terribly confused that her poor parents could afford such a house. Mother thought that if someone took out a loan, it meant that they had no money, and that she must save and conserve and devote all her energy to saving the family. She had even saved her meager allowances and given them a money gift to buy a new bedroom set for the new home, thinking that they wouldn't be able to afford it after the construction. Imagine her confused sense of awe at the splendor of that new home. What a fine and gracious home it was. Then Grandpa bought both her and Grandma mink coats. And Margaret, too.
And Grandma.
Yeah. Hearing this talk made me think of myself. I think I'm going to skip this.
No privacy anymore.
You want to read this part now? Blah, blah, blah. Hold on. Hearing this talk made me think of myself at that age and later, innocent and naive, unable to voice my hidden observations, opinions, or questions, assuming blindly that those around me were older and thus wiser, and therefore capable of controlling more capable of controlling my life than I was. And then I would always hear these little echoing rings in my ear. You're a late bloomer, Joan. They know best. Listen to them, they know best. And so on and so on. And yet, Mama displayed a paradoxical strength of will that showed through when she decided to become a nurse. She said that as a senior in high school, she had no idea what to be. There was a priest in her parish, Monsignor Crowley, who she admired greatly. She describes him as an avid outdoorsman who used to go climbing in the mountains and on exciting expeditions into the wilderness. He was a fine speaker, and she tells of people coming from great distances to hear him speak. I often have wondered if he was a precursor to my father on some level. That admiration for what he did. She said that one day Monsignor was asking a group of the girls what each of them was going to do after school. College wasn't a consideration for her in that environment and time. She was puzzled and told him that she didn't know what to do. And he said to her, "You know, Helen, have you ever considered nursing? You have all the qualities that would make a good nurse." Well, this stuck in her head, and she thought that sounded like a really good thing to think about, though she wasn't enamored with the idea. But she couldn't get it out of her head. So she finally mentioned it to her parents, but they were horrified. "A nurse," they cried, while not saying to their lovely and innocent daughter, "Why not become an actress?"
Oh, no. A milliner.
A milliner. So she went ahead and wrote to Madre Misericordia in Sacramento, where her father's sister Aunt Toot lived, and to St. Mary's in San Francisco. She applied and was accepted at both, which is hardly a surprise. And then she was confronted with a decision that she had not seriously considered at all, a choice between her parents' pleasure with her and what she wanted. The big choice. She chose St. Huh? She chose St. Mary's. The choice of that school over the other was primarily based on climate. She hated the heat of the valley. It exhausted her. San Francisco, which she had visited with her parents, could afford the cooling relief of the coastal fog, which Sacramento could not. She had applied too late in the fall semester, so she would not be leaving until January. And because of the financial pressure at home, she decided to get a job so that she could buy the necessary clothes for such a change in life, primarily uniforms which were required. She had 6 months to work and earn money. And so she went downtown in Fresno and walked door to door, asking for work in shops and stores. It was hard and humbling for this shy and timid young girl. Little encouragement was given along the way, and she returned disheartened. She said that the next day she went with her father on a business trip down the valley, and when they returned, there was a message from a fancy little boutique that they could use her and to please come in the next afternoon, or that afternoon. Grandpa, by then both her parents had acquiesced to her determination and decision. Grandpa drove her right down, and she got the job there, which she kept until December. She said it was so fancy and frilly that she felt terribly awkward. She had to buy their clothes just to work there, which she resented. She needed the job, and was determined to earn the money she needed herself. She said she said that she never told them at the shop that she was going to leave in 6 months. Even then, she was careful and determined. She worked there until a few weeks before Christmas. And her parents, though not sweet on the idea, did not deter her. Grandpa would often pick her up from work when she rode the trolley and drive her home in the evening. She worked hard and learned about the likes of ladies of the night. The other kind, who she finally figured out were the ones who came from the house around the corner and ordered great numbers of bonnets. One day, she had to deliver an order and had her eyes open wider. But when it came time for her to leave Fresno, that was the frightening and difficult experience. She had never been away from home.
Next time it's going to be you, John.
There's divas out here. She had never been away from home or the insulating valley, had never traveled by train alone. And here she was leaving to go to San Francisco, to a place she had never been, never seen. Just before she left, her friends caravaned her to Mariposa Meadows, and under a New Year's full moon, they had played in the snow and eaten their full at a feast in her honor. It was a tight group of friends. There was a party at the station to wish her off, family and friends with tears and gifts. She took the train to Alameda, where she met 2 cousins who lived there, who took her across to the city and rode the tram with her out to the hospital. And she said that as she looked up at the looming facade of that polished concrete building, her sweetheart froze in fear of what she had walked into. There before her rose a seemingly unrelenting monument, her unknown new home. And we know what happened there, who she met there, whom she met through them later in Petaluma, that young man who was leaning against a tree outside the house on Upham Street when she and Aletha, on a day off, went to visit Aletha's friend, Lorraine Lounibos. We know of the nice visit they had with the sisters and Grandma, and that when she got back into the car, he was still there, leaning against the tree. She had to ask Aletha why he wasn't married. She thought him the most handsome of men. She was swept off her feet, weren't you? When he asked Aletha if her friend could get, when he asked Aletha if her friend would go out with him, Aletha bet him $100 that he couldn't get a date with her. It took him a while. She was working at Great Hill in the hospital, 3rd West supervisor, and maybe playing a little hard to get. 4th West, how dreadful. But he finally drove down into the city, and between her hectic shifts on the floor, drove her across the newly opened Bay Bridge and took her to a hotel for a cocktail. 6 months later, they married, and the rest is us, so to speak, for in a sense, we are their history. And there are the other stories of Dad's anxiety and self-doubt, not worthy of her, of Grandma Lindblom's chagrin at her granddaughter marrying a lawyer. They're all crooks, she said. Of their first days in Petaluma, of the little house across from Wickersham Park, 2 houses off of I Street, that her sister-in-laws found and decorated for them. Dad was no good by his own admission with these sorts of things, he said. And Mama was in the valley till the wedding. By the way, they spent their honeymoon 3 blocks away from where I'm writing this in Carmel. They spent their honeymoon at the La Playa in Carmel and later in San Luis Obispo. So we can safely assume that Helen Marie, who arrived promptly 9 months later, was first conceived in Carmel, right, Helen?
No, there are a few mistakes there, but we'll go past them.
Yeah, I thought it was.
9 months that I went there before.
Huh?
From November until August.
November. Well, this is poetic license.
Okay. All right, we'll pass for that.
The sister's choice of house was a closed-in house with no yard between the houses, no space that she could not bear to live in. And so, stories of their first days in the Petaluma Hotel until they could have the little house on 5th Street that was almost finished and available to them when it would be. And stories of the exclusiveness of the small town, of comments that burned her ears and heightened her sense of alienation. I don't know why he had to go out of town to find a girl to marry. There are plenty of girls right here, she would hear. Of the shock of married life in an unknown town.
Or me.
Having been used to a large and animated family life, to the responsibility and alertness of supervising a floor of a prestigious city hospital, and reduced in daily company to the idle chatter of gossip that turns in on itself in a small town. And stories of how she loved us so, as we arrived to fill her days with diapers and wringer washers and canning and ironing the starched shirts and handkerchiefs for Dad, when he was away so often of an evening, with meetings of fraternities, and establishing a manly face and a professional name in a town that had known him as a boy. Stories of separations, of war, of him being called in the very first numbers of the town's draft lottery, of his going despite the fact that he had 3 children and could have been deferred, of the attempts to reverse the long-feared orders of going overseas to Europe, of her trip to the Valley while he was at Princeton, where he would see Einstein walking across campus as he struggled with the map of the type courses he was assigned to. That's Dad. Dad didn't like that. Of Grandpa's final muscle at the station to get his beloved daughter on a train, not an easy task during the war for a civilian, so that his daughter could travel east to say goodbye to her husband before he was to leave. And of the influence of his friend and later Senator Clarence Lees, who maneuvered to reassign him to legal affairs at Mare Island. Stories of war and babies, of rationing, and the irony of young Uncle Ed spending ration coupons for his silk stocking days in the city, and the cry of victory gardens, and the complacency of civilian life as Dad saw it, when he would return to the county for rest and relaxation before the end of the war. It had saddened him. And stories of abalone and golf and hikes and rest, of unnamed nuclear blasts in Pinole and Mare Island that shook the house in Petaluma and stood the curtains straight out into the bedrooms. She sat straight up in the bed with the shock. War years and their reminding scars of endurability. You got a lot of history, lady.
I'm going to edit that next time.
Well, I just thought it'd be nice to read. You know, you have so many, you're a well of stories, and there's so much to tell. And
wait till I write your story.
Humbling. It's all humbly. But I just wanted to share that with all of you because we get those little bits and pieces of it sometimes, and so often we say, oh, I want to write that down, I want to tell someone, and then it gets dispersed. So,
I have to be awful careful.
you don't have to be careful anything. Thank you, Mama.
Thank you so much.
You can see what I mean. Joan is very special. Nobody else, I think, takes the time to record our history, and this is just a little segment of our history, and it's very important to us. As I was listening to Joan, I was reminiscing. I'm not going to tell a story, but I'm going to tell a reminiscence. I owe everything to you, Mom, but you introduced me to Fresno. I don't know if the younger kids in the family had to go to Fresno every summer, but we certainly did. And it was on a train, the Southern Pacific train, and we would be delivered to hell. But in the middle, it was hot. You know, you really could boil an egg on the sidewalk in Fresno. But in the middle of Fresno was this splendid palace of Xanadu, this oasis built by George Kennedy. It was. I don't know if all of you have seen it. I know the younger ones haven't. It was a sprawling Spanish-style home, or Mediterranean, in the midst of green lawn, and it was air-conditioned. And plopped in the middle of that, in the central room, in this large living room, was the gathering of the Clan Kennedy. And the central figure of the Clan Kennedy was my grandfather. And he was sort of built like me. He was big and fat. He had a large stomach, and my head is not as bald as his right now, but it will be there. And so think of me, think of George Kennedy. And he would be sitting in a wonderful soft chair, and he'd pull out that cigar, and he'd light that cigar. We didn't have television in those days. We had air conditioning and we had the radio.
You're going to have your cigar today. All right, George. Where's George?
Grandpa Kennedy would pick us up sometimes late at night at the train station as we pulled in. The most exciting, we pulled in at Christmas time. It was winter. And he was there, and in the 40s, the Cadillac company made a beautiful car. And he always had a fine, dark blue Cadillac. And he'd pick us up there with his cigars. And I can remember sitting in that living room, listening to Joe Wallace beat the hell out of Jersey Joe Walcott, listening to the Democrat and Republican conventions of Dewey, Truman. And he was a splendid man, and I wish that all of you could have known Mom's father, George Kennedy, and Mom's mom, Bernice.
Thank you, Leroy.
I love you. Helen, I forgot about you. You have a story. I'm sorry. Come on up here.
The stand there.
No one else.
Then we're going to have Patrick come up here and play a little song.
I don't really have a story. I thought everyone was going to take their turn. As Joan was going along, though, I was reminiscing, and Leroy, too, of all the things I remember that probably Tom doesn't remember. I remember that beautiful organdy graduation dress of Mom. It was in the basement on B Street. Oh, it was gorgeous. I thought Mom was so lucky that she had that. What else was that? I remember the Victory Garden on 5th Street. I remember the coupons rationing where I had to stop for a cube of butter after school, go to the creamery past Grandma Lounibos' house on the way home in 1st grade. And I had a silly little story I'm going to skip. I'm just going to tell you something I heard recently. You all know that we have good friends, John and Eleanor Whalen.
Thank you,
And they were recently up in Napa Valley, and they were invited through a friend of theirs, Father Locatelli, to a dinner. And so they went to this lovely dinner at Flora Springs Winery. And the Whalens were sitting with Father Locatelli and the owners of the winery, Jerry Comas and his wife. And Jerry happened to mention that he was on the board at St. Mary's Hospital. So John Whalen asked him, out of curiosity, how he'd gotten involved with St. Mary's. And he said, well, my wife was a nurse there. So Eleanor started ticking away, and she said, by any chance, would you happen to know Helen Lounibos, meaning Mom? And they both, in unison, yelled, Helen Kennedy! And they were so excited and started reminiscing about their childhood days in Fresno. So that is Jerry Comas of Flora Springs Winery over in Napa. And so I naturally was on the phone with Mom, and she...
He was Vice President or President Bechtel or something.
Yeah, he was Vice President of Bechtel before he and his family bought Flora Springs and developed that. So that just happened a few weeks ago, and that was kind of fun. Who's next?
Anything else you people want to know? There's nothing left. Oh, look at there it goes.
You know, you've all been listening to us old fogies reminiscing, but there's a whole new generation here. And one of the more bashful members of that generation, my daughter Patty, would like to come up and say a few things. And then we're going to have Patrick play something.
Patty, make it long. Oh, this is different right here. Oh, I can remember when I was growing up, and I'm sure Tom is
Never mind, chicken, that's not a football.
the endless driving from St. Vincent's to our houses and over here, and the cookies after school. Even though we were full of cookies already, she would always make sure we had more and more. And in the green Thunderbird that always smells sort of unusual with all this actin and everything, always crammed up in there, especially the more of it that came along. And watching Superman. Do you remember watching Superman? Do you remember? But that was always really neat because it was just the ones who lived in Petaluma. It was a really neat way to get close to each other. But this one,
I remember.
yeah. And the
tell
ice
some
cream.
stories about you leaving you off at Valley where you went to kindergarten.
Over at I didn't go there.
No, over
when you left.
past McNair.
Oh, yes, Grant.
I left Patty off at the crosswalk. She crawled out of the car and met the kids that were crossing with her, and it was you grabbed a little boy by the neck and give him a kiss and knocked him down.
I remember that. I have the classic story. I mean, the ultimate classic story. Being that everybody knows that I have umpteen kids, I could not go to one of the kids' field trips. So Helen, being that she was the really nice, it was Jill's, I think, right, Jill? Yeah. It was Jill. You take them to one of Mrs. Terwilliger's thing. But Grandma, okay, but Grandma goes, and unbeknownst to everybody else, a snake has gone up Grandma's leg. And Grandma does not want to. Was you, Peter? It was snake. A snake goes up Grandma's leg, and she does not want anybody to panic. So she's got her leg like this, and she's urging the snake down her leg. Oh, that's me.
All right, enough of this. Patrick, Maestro, hit it.
Well, I think this lady deserves a very big happy birthday song. So won't you all join in? Birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Maestro's a little nervous. Start again.
Barbara and Mike for 25 years.
The grandma.
The grandma.
Oh, that's nothing.
That's the end of the plan. Everybody who wants to go to 49er games, see me after.
Some applause.
Thank you, Kay. Kay is the producer of this show.
Come here, Kay.
Bravo, Kay.
Hey, where are you?
Maybe we get a few words from Kay. A few ad-libs from Kay. Come on, Kay.
She's a professional.
I had so much fun all week working on this. Joni and I were back and forth. We had a meeting on Monday, delegated jobs. We've been running around like crazy. Joni wrote letters. You're getting a big bang out of this, huh? Anyway, I think it was a lot of fun, and it was a real good tribute to someone who I feel is real special to each and every one of us. Thank you, Helen.
Does anybody else want to say anything?
I got you. You got teary-eyed.
You rascals. What in the world have I got on my head is what I
Queen Bee.
I can't believe it.
Look in the mirror. Look in the window. You can see it in the window, Grandma.
Oh, Sonic Claus.
Happy birthday, Granny.
Oh, thank you. You're a good girl. Come see me.
Thank you
very much.
Out of the way, Granny.
Out of the way. Come on. Wonder what happened to my piece of pie.
Want a piece? Want this piece?
There's a piece down there that I left.
You want this one?
Before midnight.
Here, go ahead.
Put ice cream on it. Get it over.
There's lots of ice
Oh,
cream.
you do? Okay. All right, you're on. You can use Tom's ticket. He's never up here. I don't blame you. Well, we're gonna have to get you some tickets. I've got some tickets. Maybe your dad can talk to me about it.
Okay.
I got you.
Never been to a football game.
Oh, you'll like it. I'll take 2 for each game. Hey, you want a balloon?
David.
Juice pop.
Yeah, I just there's only gonna be grandma. But we only
Let it go.
have
Amy, let it go.
you look very cute.
You like the balloon? Can you hold on to it? Hold on to it? Hey, Leo. Hi, camera's here. I want to make sure. Catch you. Catch you. It's not going to be in the picture. I don't know. I thought Mom we were bound to outgrow D Street and everything.